All right, good morning, everybody. Please grab a drink, food, and take a seat. So this is really a very special day. We are celebrating some of our most successful alumni of the Electrical and Computer Engineering department here today, and we have a lunch ceremony. But we wanted to start the celebration early and really have a chance for all of our students here, or some of our students here, to really learn from the journey that these alumni have taken, some of their stories from the past, some of their life experiences, some advice. And we did this a couple years ago just with a couple of folks, and it was a huge success. So this year, we really wanted to make sure that you got to experience knowledge and wisdom from all of our Hall of Fame inductees. And so what we'll do quickly is we'll just go around the room. So I will give a chance to everybody to just say your name. Don't make it very long. Name and what year you're in, undergraduate or graduate student. And then I'll ask my esteemed panelists here to give a brief introduction about themselves, but don't go into your journey just yet, because I have a second question on that, all right? So we'll end with the panelists. So I'll start, we'll go this way. So I'm Veena Misra, I am your department head. Right.
Hi, good morning. Maggie Music. I actually work with NC State University and the College of Engineering Advancement.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Anna Knight, Senior Director of Philanthropy for the College of Engineering here at NC State, and very closely aligned working with ECE.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Sophie Bailey Passworth. I'm currently a senior in my undergraduate.
Hi, everyone. Very good morning. I'm Dhanush Nagaram, and I'm a graduate student in computer engineering, and I'm in my final year of graduate studies.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Shweta. I'm a fifth year PhD student.
Hello, I'm Jake. I'm in the master's program at NC State, and I'm here representing HK.
Hi, what is that?
It's the Electrical and Computer Engineering fraternity.
It's the Honor Society.
Hey, I'm Abhi Sarla. I'm an undergraduate senior here at NC State, majoring in computer engineering, and the president of Aquapec Robotics.
Hi, I'm Riley Lurch. I'm a senior in electrical and computer engineering, and I'm corporate relations chair at Women in ECE.
Hi everyone, my name is Juanjo Espinosa, and I'm a junior in electrical engineering, and I'm the vice president of IEEE.
I'm Connor Savaggio. I'm a senior in computer engineering, and I'm here representing IEEE as an officer.
Good morning, I'm Will Sheets. I am a senior undergraduate, and I am the technical development lead for IEEE.
Hi everyone, I'm Maria Stubendick. I will be graduating with my master's in electrical engineering in 5 weeks. And I'm a grad student representative for Women in ECE.
Hi, I'm Emma Pollack. I'm a senior in electrical engineering, and I'm president of Women in ECE.
Let's go back over here. Oh, sorry, you're eating. Should we start from the other side?
I'm Sahid C. I'm a sophomore in electrical and computer engineering, and I'm here with ECE Ambassador.
Yeah, hi, I'm Shraddha. I'm a sophomore in computer engineering, and I'm also a student ambassador.
Hi, I'm Wyatt, and I'm a third year in electrical engineering, and I'm with the ECE Ambassadors.
Hello everyone, my name is Addison. I am a fourth year, and I'm in the dual major program, electrical and computer engineering, and I'm also the treasurer for the ECE Ambassadors.
And I'm Anjali. I'm a grad student going for my master's, graduating in the spring. Majoring in computer engineering, and I'm the president of the ECE Ambassadors.
Oh, good morning, everybody. Sarah Consini, Director, Career Services, Corporate Relations for Electrical and Computer Engineering, the proud supporter of the #1 Caitlin Godfrey, who is actually not in the room, but she runs this and coordinates all of this for you today. And we are just thrilled, both the students and our distinguished guests, that you are here with us, taking the time to let us celebrate you and all of your really amazing accomplishments. So with that, I'm going to let Veena take it away with the panel.
So let's hear from our panel. Please just introduce your name, what degree you received from NC State, and what your current role is. Start with Kim.
Hi, Kim Hazelwood. I graduated in 2000 with a master's in computer engineering. And you'll hear all about my journey, but right now I am semi-retired. Which means she's done well.
Hi, my name is Mohit Bhatnagar. I did my PhD from ECE in 1994. And you will also hopefully hear about my journey. And unlike her who says semi, it means she's working on a startup. I'm actually retired.
My name is Keith Bowman. Good morning. I graduated in 1994, so I might be one of the older ones here, and my bachelor's in electrical engineering, and then I went to Georgia Tech to receive my master's and PhD. And I have been working at Intel, and now I work at Qualcomm.
Hi, I'm Sridhar Shukla. I got my PhD from the ECE department in 1990, and now I'm retired, having fun.
All right, fantastic. So let's go ahead and start these the journeys of all of our panel here. So I'd like to ask you to walk us through your journey to your current role. How did you end up where you're at now? And along the way, share any stories about challenges that you might have encountered. And hopefully we'll pause after that and see if the students have any questions before we move on. All right? So who would like to start? Sridhar, we'll start with you.
And if the panelists can use the handheld microphone.
Oh, okay, thank you.
How many minutes, Rita?
3-4 minutes.
Is this on? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So let's start at the beginning. I went to my electrical engineering degree at IIT Mumbai. Came to Virginia Tech in '83 following the herd. Fell out of it a little bit to begin a PhD at NC State in '85. Finished that in '90, but I left the campus in '89 to begin a job at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey in California. And I did that for about 6.5 years. And then in 1995, we returned as a family back to Pune. So I'm there since. I've been basically a tech serial entrepreneur. Have an experience of 3 companies. Thanks to NC State experience, all 3 became successful. And now I'm retired, having a good time, doing a bit of, interested projects in security and school tech. So that's much less than 3 minutes.
That's good. That works. Yeah. Right. Keith.
Okay, thank you. So I mentioned earlier, I think when I was coming to NC State, like many of you, I'm sure, strong in mathematics, and I asked my dad, it's like, hey, what do you think? He's like, well, I think there's a lot of opportunities in electrical engineering. So I listened to my dad, and I came to NC State. I think I learned a lot here. I think, like, relative to my high school, NC State was actually pretty hard for me. So it was pretty challenging, and I learned a lot. And then I think I really wanted to go to graduate school, and I had a passion for eventually getting my PhD. And I'll say, like, in the mid-90s, there was this huge dot-com bubble, and I have all my colleagues getting their masters. You can see some head nodding here, right? And they're getting these amazing jobs and salaries, and I'm sitting here with a graduate assistant. You know how that is. And so I just, but I was, I debated. I even interviewed, and I was thinking about going into leaving early, but I decided that was my dream. And I was like, I'm going to chase the dream. And so I've continued that. And I actually worked for this advisor. His name was Jim Meindl. He's very well known in the area that I'm in, solid state circuits. And I really have a passion for doing research, and particularly solving really complex problems that have an impact. And I think going into industry, that was something I really enjoy doing, is defining what is the key problem and then taking the time to do the research and to do that. So I did that at Intel. I was at Intel for 12 years. And when I went to Georgia Tech, I moved to, it was Oregon is where I was living at Intel. And my wife and I had 3 kids, and we really wanted to get back closer, motivation for family, so they can be closer to the grandparents. And I found this opportunity at Qualcomm. They had this small site that was growing, and so I joined a research center there. And so I think it's very fulfilling when you do research projects and not only publish the papers, but also when this can be integrated into products. So, thank you.
Great. Shall I? If
Yes.
it's okay, I will just, can everyone hear me?
I think he wants it.
Oh, for that.
Okay, no problem. My name is Mohit Bhatnagar, and as I mentioned, I did my PhD from here in the area of power semiconductor devices with Professor Balaga. Some of you might have heard of silicon carbide power devices. So the first major seminal work that was done under his guidance, I was the one first silicon carbide PhD. What's remarkable about all of their journey is that where we ended up happening, there was no way we could have predicted when we started our journey. And this is one of the things reminds me of Steve Jobs' quote, that you do not connect the dots of your life looking forward, you only connect them looking backwards. And you have to have trust and belief in yourself that somehow, in the future, these dots will get connected. So just to give you an idea, I started my journey as a material scientist, then did electrical and computer engineering work, took graduate level classes without ever taking undergrad class. It was most fun. Ended up doing frantic pace of work in terms of research, patents, papers, building products. Then at the top of it, just left all of it to go and connect another dot in management consulting work at McKinsey. 25 years at startup, multiple startup building businesses worth hundreds of millions of dollars, culminating at Apple with managing projects, some of the largest projects in the industry with $2.5, $3 billion worth of infrastructure projects. And I look at it, and that first thought was when I built my first electrical circuit as a 7, 8-year-old, or reading a Scientific American article. So it's that these dots get connected, and it's only looking back, and then you say, well, hopefully there'll be a few more. So that's high-level journey. Kim.
Hi, everybody. Kim Hazelwood again. So my journey started, I was an undergrad at Clemson. I graduated in '98. That was the height of the dot-com boom. My friends were getting job offers with signing bonuses of a car. And I said, well, you know, let me just put in a couple more years and get a master's, and then it'll be even better, right? So foreshadowing. So I came to NC State and intending to just do my master's. And in 2000, it started to look a little rough. So I continued on, got my PhD, went up to Harvard. Once I finished my PhD, I recognized that I was uniquely qualified to be a faculty member. So that's what I did. Also, the job market hadn't totally recovered by the time I graduated with my PhD. So I was a professor at the University of Virginia for 7 years. Got tenure around 2011 and took a sabbatical in California at Google. While at Google, we did probably some of the most exciting things I had seen in a while. I was part of the founding team that worked on the TPU, which when you're in computer engineering, this is the dream role. So that was amazing. I got tapped to, at some point I started to recognize I kept extending my leave of my sabbatical. Maybe I'm still on sabbatical. So I got tapped to head over to Yahoo Labs. They wanted to rebuild their research function. And I thought, I'm perfect for that because I have an academic background, but also a hands-on industry background. So went over there, and it was an interesting time at Yahoo. I kind of felt like it was like the .com bust, but only at Yahoo. So you know, but it was like kind of chance. Like I sort of knew that was a likely outcome, right? I was like, this company isn't doing so well, but it is a dream opportunity. Let's give it a shot. What's the worst thing that can happen? I can always go back to Google. So after a year there, I got recruited over to Facebook. That was lots of fun. You know, it was a very small company at the time. About 10,000 people. Everybody was very young. It was very lively. It was a big contrast from being at a company that struggled. And so I spent 10 years at Facebook, now Meta, working on everything from infrastructure, then AI infrastructure, then AI research, working on like the latest and greatest when it comes to, you know, I pivoted into essentially AI at that point. And I started my semi-retirement earlier this year, and I guess stay tuned for the rest of my story.
All right, thank you everyone. I think the common theme, as Mohit put it so well, is you just went along with the opportunities that came in front of you without really knowing where you're gonna head, right? So my next question, and then I'll turn it over to the students, is can you share perhaps some 2 to 3 things that allowed you to be successful? 2 or 3 things of your traits that allowed you to be successful? Yeah, we can start with you, Sridhar.
So the topmost one that comes to my mind is staying in touch with people, no matter where and when I met them. The one anecdote I have is at the Naval Postgraduate School, we used to have some research and travel grants. And since I knew that I was going to return to India and start a business, I would attend these conferences in Silicon Valley. And I would present myself as a recommender to the US Navy for tech, and so people would listen to me. Otherwise, who gives the time of the day to a professor from the Naval Postgraduate School? So I remember on one single afternoon at Group 94, we sat down for lunch with a person, with a group of 8, and 2 of us who were not even next to each other got up at the same time, went to wash our hands together, and when we stepped out, we talked to each other for some time. That fellow was from London, and after the conference, we stayed in touch. He turned out to be the one who gave me the first lead to get a contract even before I had returned to Pune. That got me a start, a chance encounter. That same afternoon, I went to another part of the conference, and there was a British fellow who came forward. There was no one at his booth. So when I went there, he was very happy. And namaste is what he did. I said, man, in Silicon Valley, somebody's saying clean namaste to me. So we got talking. He lived in London and San Francisco. It turned out that several years later, maybe 15, he was the one who gave me, we never met in between, but stayed in touch. He gave me my first lead for the first product that I had produced. And then I cannot count the number of classmates, roommates, and seniors, juniors that I could say I have leveraged to get business and to get colleagues over the years. So I would say that's the one thing I can talk about.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay, I also agree with networking and having strong connections, but since Sri talked about that, I'm going to talk about a different topic just to complement that. I'm going to talk about to our undergraduates. So I really believe strongly that an undergraduate, it's very important to learn the fundamentals of a particular field. I know there's a lot, there's always going to be the hot new topic, and there's going to be things that are out there right now. Of course, it's artificial intelligence, and people are looking at different ways, but I think really understanding those fundamental concepts and those problem-solving skills are going to carry you a long ways. That's really the building blocks for your entire career, I believe. I think for graduate students, so I thought we had some graduate students, correct? Okay, great, fantastic. Okay, I think as graduate school, the most important part, I think, of the PhD education is defining the problem. It's very hard to do, right? And I think it's really important to clearly define that problem. And I like to think whenever I'm going to pursue a problem, I think I start out with best case scenario. If everything were to work perfect, and nothing ever works perfect, but if it were to work perfect, is the potential benefit significant, right? And if you find the answer is no, that's probably not the right project to work on, because you're going to invest so much of your time, pain, sweat, tears, blood into this project. So I think it's important to think of hey, in a best case scenario, what would be the potential outcome? So really clearly define the problem. And then second, I think a lot of times when we look at these problems, there can be a lot of areas that are quite complex. There are, for example, I'll just use the example Kim shared about the TPU, right? The tensor processing unit. That's a really big undertaking. So I think one thing that's really important is look at doing the simple case first. Like try to simplify things, break it down into smaller problems, but really do the simple case first and try to understand that and before you try to understand the major complex problem.
That's great.
I want to click on what Keith said about fundamentals. The world is so uncertain. You're going to do things that you have absolutely no idea about. In fact, you'll have to throw yourself into problems that you don't even know anything about. So invest in that fundamentals he talked about. But in addition to fundamentals, do two things. One, in certain areas, become that deep expert, that wherever you are, people look at you. Have one area where you're so good, but just remember, if that's all you do, that area will shift. So fundamentals allow you to switch across, and the deep depth allows you to build that expertise. And in a sense, it's like be able to go deep into an ocean to bring the pearls, but you also don't stay at the same place. And the third thing, which is so important, is that don't just look at fundamentals in ECE. Build capability to understand what the cross-disciplinary subjects are. What they are, you'll have to figure it out. But for example, take classes in linguistics, take class in economics, go out and take that class in bioinformatics. Your curiosity will allow you to pursue. So I want you to double click on fundamental. The second thing I would say is that I wish you all the success. But if all you get in success in life, that means you're not challenging yourself. Embrace failure like crazy. Thrive on your failures. When things are down, when you're doubting yourself, that's the best moment of learning from you. Embrace them. And in fact, go back and say, what did I try? Last year, or today, or in the last 10 years, where there was a real chance of failure. And if you don't have those chances, then I think there's an opportunity to push yourself even harder, take more risks. Kim?
Sure, I guess I'll double click on a couple things that I've heard thus far. I think what's important is not fearing pivots, not fearing change, because that's when the most opportunities will find you, where you say, well, it's going to take a little bit of a leap. I always found that if I can figure out what I can bring to a new area, so for instance, with my pivot to AI, right? I started, with the idea of I understand the fundamentals of infrastructure. I've now learned some basics about AI, and here's some really important things right at that intersection that the AI experts aren't going to know, most of the infrastructure people aren't going to know unless they understand how to sort of bridge the two worlds. And so starting out with that bridge allowed me to pivot safely and feel like I was contributing along the way. And there have been many, many examples where things like that have come up. I don't usually wait until it's big and on the headlines. I'm like, this could go somewhere. Sometimes I'm right, and sometimes I'm wrong, right? But it's fine. I just look for something that is exciting and interesting to me, and I'm like, I believe in it. We'll see. It doesn't really matter. I also want to double click on the people side. So I was at Harvard. I graduated in 2004. I don't know if you know the timeline, but there was also another famous graduate in 2004. Well, he didn't graduate, he dropped out and started Facebook. I wish I had paid more attention to my fellow classmates. I was so hyper-focused on learning and getting my degree that I forgot to look around. And then fast forward, 20 years, I was reporting to somebody who's reporting to somebody who's reporting to that kid who was in classes with me that I didn't really pay attention to. So I wish I had done a better job there of really getting to know my colleagues. The people that I did get to know did open a lot of doors for me for the rest of my life. So every job I ever got was the result of making a phone call to somebody I knew and or them making a phone call to me. And you know, it's really interesting how it ends up playing out. It's not always in the way you would expect. At some point at Facebook, I had in my organizational roll-up, one of my PhD committee members from Harvard was reported to somebody who reported to me. So that was really like, you'll get these inversions. Definitely in Silicon Valley, you will report to somebody who used to report to you, or vice versa will happen all the time. So I think that that's a really, really important facet of just making sure that you invest the time in people. Also, how you get everything done for sure in industry is collaborative. And so it's so, so important to build up those personal connections with people because it just makes things much, much easier in solving problems.
Okay. Great, thank you. That's some really great insight. I think two things that I really want to emphasize here is this concept of networking. You have your direct network, and then you have a little bit of an indirect network. And I think studies have shown that the indirect network, people that you don't see every day, for example, can help you a lot in your future goals. And the other thing that comes to mind is innovation happens at the intersection of two fields, which is what you were saying. So some really great messages there. And fundamentals are the most important, right? Without fundamentals, it's difficult to navigate. All right, so I'm going to stop now and open it up to students. All right, we already have a question. Go ahead.
My question is, it's very addictive to seek validation. At least as a student, what course do I take? What do I do afterwards? Or, for instance, do I do a PhD? So, to those of you who have actually done PhDs maybe, or whatever new courses you have taken, how do you emancipate yourself from this validation? Because it's very easy to think that, oh, these people are doing the course, so I'm going to take the course. But where did you seek the validation from, or where did you negate it? So I just want to know.
I want to jump on that one. So if you want to get cured of seeking validation, I think the PhD is a pretty good one. Because you don't get like an A in your dissertation, right? Mm-hmm. And there's not even a structured timeline, right? You're gonna have people asking you, when are you gonna finish? And by the way, the answer to that is always 2 years. Because you can say that forever and nobody's really gonna remember that you said that 2 years ago. So, that's something where you, by necessity, are gonna have to learn to stop seeking that validation. It's such an unstructured problem. Like once you start to get into unstructured problems where you really don't know, is this the best answer? It's like, I don't know, this is what we're gonna go with. We'll see, right? So that's how things will be, at some point you gotta wean yourself off of it, but I do think that it's a pretty good way to do it with us.
Look, one simple way to say is that whether it's me or another fellow IEEE person, they are equally clueless. You are seeking the journey you should be on. Nobody has an idea about the journey. In fact, that journey is not known. You're defining that journey. So if you're going on the path that 5 other people have done it, chances are the world is different world. It's gonna fail. You can look at certain core principles. Sridhar talked about networking, he talked about fundamentals. She talked about going at the intersections. Those are general guiding things. But it's your journey. Why are you letting somebody else be defining that journey? Now, of course, learn and get inspired and avoid the mistakes that other people have done. But let this be your journey. And so what? So what if you didn't take a course? Life doesn't end. If you don't take a course, you can always go and learn. In fact, you'll have to learn more things on your own, right? And so what if you end up taking extra year in PhD? Big deal. Big deal. You look at our age differences, the journey we have taken, nobody's gonna tell you, oh, you did your PhD at age 24 or 26. Nobody cares, really. So I think the shackles, you don't have to emancipate. You are the ones who have put the shackles around yourself. Why are you putting shackles?
Make some comments. But by the way, this is a panel where we're not disagreeing, right? Normally you want a panel. No, like, yes, I agree with that. I want to kind of go back to what Kim said. Yeah, when you go to, I personally love the PhD experience, but it's extremely difficult. And I think that the answers aren't in the back of the book, right? So that's the problem. Like the problems aren't necessarily already been defined. The whole purpose is that you're doing something that hasn't been done before. So that in itself is a major challenge. And just like I've spoken earlier, a lot of things are going to end up at dead ends. It's not going to work out. And in fact, my experience with PhD and research in general, and I've been doing research through industry, is there are the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. There are times where just nothing's working out, no matter what. And you show up the next day and keep trying and keep pushing. And then all of a sudden there is this brief moment of inspiration and like everything comes together. And like, I'll give an example. I would say in my PhD experience of like 5 years, probably the main contributions accumulated in a handful of weeks as far as the key ideas. I mean, so it was pretty much like trying, and then all of a sudden this inspiration and oh, I got this. And in fact, actually one of the things that happened to me, I was waiting for my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, her plane was delayed. And it came to me while I'm waiting. This is back in the day, we could actually wait. I was waiting at the gate, exactly. And I was drawing everything out of Sports Illustrated. I still have a Sports Illustrated, by the way. And I drew like the whole concept and so forth in the margins because it just kind of came to me. And that was actually one of the more significant contributions to my PhD research. So, where we're coming here is that a lot of it is perseverance, staying with it. I will say when you do have something that does eventually work out and it's really new, it's innovative, it is fulfilling. So it's not that like there's not a validation point or it comes, but it's very different from school. You go to undergraduate, you're going to have your grades at the end of the semester and you can clearly see how well things went. But PhD is a different experience, and I would say even beyond that, it's the same, I think, experience where there are going to be tough times and things aren't working out, you're taking chances, but if you take the right chance and it just happens to work out, I think it's very exciting.
So I'll add a little bit to that, but it doesn't remain applicable only to PhDs, but some general principles I follow. Validation is good, provided you take it from either those who are going to struggle with you, that is impacted by your decision, or those who really care for you. There is no vested interest. Otherwise, talk is cheap, right? They don't have to live your life with you. It's easy to give advice. Take it from one ear, leave it out from the other. But if someone is going to really struggle with you, then pay attention to it, because you don't always know yourself as well as, say, the spouse knows you. So that's one part. The second part is, there is always opportunity where people are rushing in the other direction, provided your intuition and self-belief says that nobody is going there, but I think there is something in it. Believe in yourself and go there.
Thank you so much.
Right, go ahead.
Hey, thank you guys for speaking today. One question I had was that it sounds like through all of your journeys, there's been many crossroads. What are some core beliefs or principles that you've held that have helped you decide, like when you come to that crossroads, that push you to, hey, I'm gonna make that leap, or I'm gonna make this decision, and that even if it doesn't end up, it ends up in a dead end or so, those kind of core beliefs that help you, ultimately end up recovering or bouncing back to ultimately lead to where you are today. And is there anything you would have changed in your journeys?
I have a short answer to that. First, figure out what your North Star is,
okay,
and head towards it at all crossroads.
I would say, so I do research and I work in industry, okay? So there's kind of the people that are really doing the designs for the products, and they're on extremely tight timelines, tight schedules, okay? So I would say as a researcher, I get two reactions from talking to a product person, like, hey, here's an idea. And by the way, that's also key. We talked about networking earlier. You want to collaborate, so it's like a shared experience. But a lot of times when they're hearing your idea for the first time, there's only two responses. It's either they hate the idea, you're wasting their time and you need to go away, or you're late. Like, this is really important and it should be in the product now. There's no other response, okay? So it's one of those two. And I would say from my experience, a lot of times you get different reactions for people because maybe what you're proposing is going to change like what they've done, right? Like they've always done it. I mean, you have experienced people who are really good at what they're doing. And I have tremendous respect for people that produce the products that are out there, right? Because I mean, this is mass production of millions of units and so forth. And so they have to work. But like when you suggest something that like, oh, we're gonna change what you're doing, what do you think about that? And a lot of times that's not received well, right? It's gonna be, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, right? You're not here, you're not doing this. There's no way you can do that. And so I would say it kind of goes back to, if I think like the idea is fundamentally sound, okay? And I think that what I'm hearing is more of, it's not attacking like the fundamentals of the problem, but it's attacking like, oh, we've never done that before. I don't let that bother me, right? Like I know some people, like I've been in there with like managers and they hear the feedback like, oh, this isn't gonna go well. And I actually, it's kind of funny, I tell some of my colleagues, like, if my managers are actually early on think it's gonna work, then I think we're not embracing enough risk. But like I actually want them to be in doubt, because that has like the higher chance of a big return on investment. So it's interesting. So from that point of view, I really look at the fundamentals. The fundamentals are there, and it's going to be able to provide this expected benefits. But someone is just saying, oh, we have a different way that we do things in the flow. I mean, you need to take feedback into consideration. But I would say it's something that I look at, and I'm always looking at, is this a fundamental feedback, or is this something that we could potentially change? So,
I think most crossroads happen because of lack of information. And that is just way of life. So you have to do two things. One is that, I think one of them talked about, do your research. Go get the facts, look at the problem comprehensively. And you may find that it's actually not a crossroad. There are certain paths which are more certain. And maybe you want to take them, maybe you don't. So that's one thing. The second, uncertainty is going to be there. That's why it's a crossroad. Otherwise it would be. So that brings back to the point I said, embrace your failures. And also, no crossroad, whether it is a technical problem or life thing, is going to be just that one point. It is going to be a series of crossroads. So you'll have a chance to iterate. The first time that she was looking at the TPU architecture, or I was designing certain devices, technology, you get your chance. In fact, I would argue that only by going forward, you actually get information to reduce uncertainty so you can make the right decisions. So I would say do your research deep, don't get into complete paralysis with lack of information, and then make the best decision and iterate on it. So.
I just have the attitude of like, what's the worst that can happen, right? You go right on. One of them is probably not leading straight off of a cliff into alligator-infested waters, right? So I don't really stress too much about it, because I just think, what's the worst? What's the worst thing? I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to pick the one I feel more strongly about, and I'll go. And the other trick that I use, I think it's more of a mental trick than reality, is this notion of fail fast, right? So you can just like, hey, I'll kind of head down this one road for a little bit until I see, is it headed towards alligator-infested waters? Then I'll turn around and go the other ways. So I just try not to overthink it.
So I have a follow-up question to Sridhar. You mentioned get to know your North Star, right? So that is maybe a mission statement of your life. So did all of you have a mission statement that you developed early on? And if that is, would you be willing to share what your North Star is? Yeah, let's start with you, Sridhar.
So I had an articulation of my North Star very early on, but didn't know what it meant. Okay, I was saying it because everybody else said that. Over the years, it became clearer to me, and the North Star was, build a successful product business living in India. Still work in progress, because definition of success changes as you grow older in life. So all of the decisions were building a successful product business in India throughout. And that has held me in good stead. Although there were many years in which I was actually going in the opposite direction, but I knew I would go back. So that's the example.
Okay.
And while heading towards it, there was no other consideration. And that helped because, the decision making was very easy.
That's great.
Yeah, I think you asked a great question. And I would say, at least in my case, I may have had like shifting North Stars, okay, as I went through. But actually, I really do like the question a lot that you asked. And I want to say that there's a book actually I went through with my kids. There's like a teenage version called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Okay, and I'm a big fan of that book actually. And so I think that they talk about a mission statement, right? They talk about that. And I would say part of that is going to be different aspects. If you really say your North Star, I think it's more than just what we do with our work. It's our family. It's our beliefs, like our core beliefs, our worldview, our faith. And so for me personally, my North Star mission statement is to live a life of significance, basically loving and collaborating with God, family, colleagues to make an impact in society.
That's great.
I think some of us are figuring out our North Star right here on the side. I was trying to think of the central theme that I tend to carry around with me. And I think, first and foremost, I do want to make sure that I am contributing to societal good in some way. But the other key thing that I think is really been my North Star is fun. Like, I want to make sure I'm always having fun. Now, strangely for me, solving hard technical problems is a lot of fun. But there are a lot of other things that are fun to me that I make sure to incorporate into my life. Like, we've been hyper-focused on, our professional lives. But like for me, what's fun? Kids are fun. I had 4 kids. Running is fun, so I run marathons. I think that the central theme for me has been make sure that you're always having fun. And if it starts to not become fun, then make a change.
I really resonate with that because, do only what is going to be fun for you and do it with the people you have fun with. And when either of the two stop doing it.
I would say for me, there has not been a particular mission statement per se, and I think, Keith, you commented, it changes. But there has been some guiding principles, and they actually go deep down and know who you are, and they will become your guiding. For me, it was curiosity. Short of trying to understand the entire world, everything else will be less, actually. I want to be able to not just understand, be able to explain that when you press that your smartphone, how's the tactile interface working? What is happening at the atomic level? What is the hardware software stack looks like? How is that information coming to data center? What is the background ML models that are working? How is that processing being presented to you as an inference? All of that, entire thing. So what that required me, and I did not know this, it required me to go from material science to solid state to electronic design, automation, container stacks, virtualization, large scale storage networks, AI infrastructures. And that journey continues. And in the process, you discover beautiful little things. I was into juggling, and one day it occurred to me that juggling is nothing. Juggling M objects in N hands is a finite state machine without collisions. So suddenly you start saying, okay, what else? So it is that curiosity that has been there. The second thing I think is go from abstract to actually doing something. You want to be able to go back and say, you know what, cool ideas, but what have I done about it, right? So I'll give you a non-EC example, but where the engineering comes in. I wanted to do tour across the world, ride from Golden Gate Bridge to Brooklyn Bridge on my cycle. Well, what kind of bike do you need? So I've been on this 4-6 month journey building this perfect bicycle, where I went back and looked at the size of the titanium tubes and what should be the thickness of material. Well, guess what? The material science scores in solid state. And I'm working on the aerodynamics of it and building a system where you can actually see what does the aerodynamic pattern changes with age. So it's the curiosity, but then do something about that thing. And the third thing is that keep on, I think she talked about pivot, he talked about it. Whatever you have done, go do something next, harder and difficult and more challenging. And celebrate, yeah, celebrate, but then it was yesterday, move on to something more next.
So are you gonna bike across the country? Tell us.
Well, that's the
Is
plan.
that
That's
Wow.
plan. Yeah, so
That's
far I've
amazing.
done 500-mile rides, it's 3,000, just 6 times more. That's
amazing.
All right, how about another question from the students?
I have a question. So I wanted to ask, like, how do you decide when you're working on something, whether it's not working out as you expected, like you have to keep working on it hard, or it's time to pivot? How do you make it decide?
Okay.
Yeah, you have to do it in a way that does not give you a sense of failure, because your decisions stay with you forever. And if by changing or continuing to do it, if it's going to create regret later, then don't do that. Just be fair to yourself and make sure anytime you change, you do it for a positive reason, and then that works.
So in the spirit of a little bit of disagreement, I think embrace failure, I said. You are going to make mistakes, and that is part of life. So what you're asking yourself, I think, is a more specific question. What's the balance between grit and pivot? Right? We talked about pivot, but I can tell you, if you keep on pivoting, it doesn't lead you anywhere else, right? So you have to do that balance between grit and pivot. And it comes back to what I said earlier. First, you research your problem, look at your options, critically evaluate what is that important, what is the likelihood of success, quantify that project. She said about what is the greatest upside out of it, but then she also said what is the worst thing can happen. He talked about, so analyze the heck out of it, build a probabilistic model of outcome on it, but then at some point, don't do any more analysis. Take that, go to this, because guess what? You'll get a chance to do more pivots. But it's that question you're asking, and all of us ask this question because there are people who went on grit and died, and there are people who pivoted too much and didn't lead anywhere. So you're asking a very important question. So I would say bring structural analysis to it along with your own value system, and then go out and make the decision and execute on it.
And I think that it's an opportunity, anytime you go down a path and you're like, all right, this isn't working out, right? This was a smart person going down what seemed to be a very reasonable path, right? In the course of going down that path, you clearly learned more information that made you suspect maybe this isn't a good path. So being able to articulate, being able to articulate what were the learnings, what were the things that were missed when you first looked at this path, that's something probably a lot of other people would want to know, right? So figuring out the silver lining of stopping a path, hey, I went down this path so I can now educate everybody else why exactly this didn't lead where I thought it would, right? So understanding that, and then again, that's another way where it's not really a failure, right. It's actually a ton of learning. Right. And you can save a lot of people a lot of headache, because it wasn't like you were completely uninformed. You're a smart person going down a very reasonable path. But what was wrong with that path?
Right. I'll just to your comments. I really agree with both. I think that you're to Louis' point about the distinction between pivot versus grit. And I think a lot of times sticking with it is incredibly important. So to answer your question, I would say is that I would look at like one of two things, and I'm kind of taking this in the view of, like, if you're pursuing some new idea, I'm kind of considering like that. I would say if you find out there's a fundamental flaw to it, okay, then that would make me pivot. Like I'm saying, oh, I didn't realize this, but there is this fundamental issue that just no way this can work. Then clearly I need to pivot. Okay, so that's one. The other is you might go through and you might take it through a long ways and find out, hey, this particular path, it's just not practical. Maybe for some reason you thought it was, but then once you kind of got further along and you learned new information, you found out, oh, that's just not going to work. So this happens a lot with the research I do, like in industry, right? It's like, hey, this is the way we want to do something, and we pursue it. And again, I really love the idea. I like working with people. I'm more in the circuits area, and I like to work with people in microarchitecture because you find some really clever solutions at the boundaries. And so a lot of times we might think, hey, we can do that there, we can do this here, and we find out a solution, but the way maybe it's just not practical. And I ran into that, but then just like what Kim says, like you learn something you didn't know previously, and now when you go back and look at a different solution, you now have that perspective, and you're now accounting for that. And I think that can lead to a much better solution. I've seen this over and over. So actually, embrace failure. Failure is actually not a bad thing. I know sometimes it's not necessarily what you want to put on your resume or something like, hey, I failed at this or something. But I think learning that experience is extremely valuable.
One thing I wanted to add on, and there's an important factor that distinguishes success and failure, and it's timing. And so sometimes it's actually a perfectly reasonable idea, just not right now, right? AI is a perfect example. Do you know how long AI people have been leading the AI course? And everybody sort of laughed at them and called them failures and for years. And honestly, it was the wrong thing to be working on in the 1990s. It wasn't until 2012 when people started using GPUs to do AI that anything interesting could happen in AI. So some of these things you need to put a pin in it and like maybe revisit later. Maybe later the world will be ready for this, but right now it's not, right? Right?
Just in the interest of creating confusion.
I love that there's an interest.
There is something to be said for never giving up. The only qualifier I would like to add is, if you decide to start something new and stop something old, as long as you're doing it for a positive reason, you're good. If you decide to not start something new and continue doing what you're doing, as long as that too is for a positive reason, you're good. So the positivity of your frame of mind is very important.
Thank you for sharing.
All right. Yes, go ahead.
My dad and I have this inside joke that mistakes often lead to life lessons. For example, on one of my first programming tests, I wrote a multiplication sign like an X and lost 3 points because it wasn't an asterisk. So I will forever remember to write as an asterisk instead of an X. What's a mistake that you made, either in your school or in your career, that led to a life lesson that you'll never forget?
Let me answer that.
Too many to count.
Yeah. We were with a startup, and like any other startup, it has growth that takes place, and we were exploding, and we got an offer to buy out, and we said we could go and make it into a multi-billion-dollar company instead of a several $100 million company. And we looked at it, and each one of us who were the key leaders could have sold that company and would have been, at least financially taken care of it, and we chose not to do it. And later on, it didn't work out. And I look at it, and that's people say $1 million, it was actually tens of $1 million mistake, or possibly $100 million for some of us. And the lesson you learned on this one is, it's okay, because we got another chances at it. But sometime you would also have to realize that you might have your own blind spots, because our investors and a whole bunch of people were telling us to do it. And it's okay, I don't have regrets on it, because it led to follow-on success and all those other things. But it's important to be aware of your own blind spots, and it could be actually quite expensive.
I would say, you asked a great question, and I'm trying to like filter through how many to go through here. I would say maybe like as a young person working in industry, I had like an idea I thought was really good. I thought, okay, and it was kind of like, it was all in the research, and it was kind of like the Ivy Tower, and then I go to talk to the product people, and it just went really poorly. And I was shocked by this. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I mean, this is obvious. It's such a great idea. Like why can't you see this, right? And so what I would say, it kind of goes back to a little bit of the comment about how you network and work with others. So instead of like trying to have the big presentation or presenting, it's kind of meeting people a little bit in the hallway and saying, hey, what do you think of this idea? What's your thoughts? And getting that early feedback, right? And also, I like to do this. I like to kind of build the community, the collaboration, and I want them to be part of the presentation, right? So this is like not just mine, but it's also people in the product teams and so forth, and then it's like a shared experience, and now they have some skin in the game, right? And so I've noticed that like really working and trying to be more collaborative really helps get ideas from the drawing board to actual product implementation. So that's one of the experiences that I've seen. And I failed early on because I was just like, hey, the idea by itself should succeed. But it really takes the collaboration and getting everyone on board. A lot of times it's person by person. It's not you just convince everyone in like one meeting.
So at my age, it's very hard to say which mistake was the really big one. You just see too many of them. But you do think about what it is that you could have done differently. And the one thing that comes to me is, I could have managed my time better.
It's a good one.
You want to expand on that?
You find that sometimes you spend a lot of time looking for something, doing something, and if you just take a break, do something else, or just spend more time at home, not beat your head on the wall too much, or even if you are getting success, don't get addicted to it. There are all these things that happen. But the one resource that never comes back is time, and one has to be extremely conscious of it. And so in that sense, all of you are way richer than us because you have so much more of that than us. So just, make the best use of it is what I would say.
Your X versus asterisk story gave me flashbacks to one of my first big lessons on that note, which was always read the syllabus. So I learned that one by walking into class first semester of undergrad one day, and the professor said, any questions before the test? And I realized there was no mention of the test other than it was on the syllabus. And so that was my first big lesson. I had a really important lesson that I learned early when joining Facebook. I went into a technical review, and the person was presenting this design, and there was a design decision that didn't make any sense to me. So I raised my hand, can you make that make sense? I don't understand why you're doing it that way. And I sort of felt a little dismissed, it was like, oh no, it's complicated, right? And I look up, So I went away and I did a bunch of homework and built a case for why this was the wrong decision. And I showed up in the next meeting and presented the case on why this was a bad idea. It seemed very reasonable of an approach at the time. It was absolutely the wrong way to do what I wanted to do there, right? Which was just get the design corrected, but doing it in a way that did not factor in the humans, the people who had poured their work into the design decision that was made, and for me to just come in and say that's going to cost $160 million, we're not going to do it. like the right way to have done that is to approach that person privately and say, here's some data that I pulled, right? Don't do it in front of the whole crowd. Because I basically made a pretty big enemy that day, and it took years to kind of live that down and repair the trust, and it really, doing things the right way then became my superpower, right? Making sure you don't ever do that. You don't ever blindside somebody with data. You're basically bringing a bomb to a knife fight, right? So that was probably the biggest lesson that I got was doing things the right way and factoring in people in how you execute.
Yeah, so it sounds like in your case, Kim, doing things the right way was talking to them privately.
Yes.
And in your case, if you want to sell your idea, talk to your colleagues before presenting it in a formal setting. So there's some themes here. And I wanted to go back to the time question because a couple of years ago, Mohit was in front of a student panel and he shared a very nice, your vision of how one could potentially distribute their time. And I would love for our students today to hear that.
There's no whiteboard.
I know there's no whiteboard, yeah.
I think you were talking about North Stars. You'll quite often find that unlike proverbial North Star, there are multiple North Stars. You're dealing with your life has multiple dimensions to it. So I think it was at North Carolina State in one of the apartments here where people bottle of tequila or something. I came up with a framework that has served me well for 35 plus years. It is, if you think of your life, it has multiple dimensions to it. And you have to figure it out, how do you allocate your time most judiciously? Because that is, as she said, that is one constant. All of us have 24 hours, 52 weeks, etc. So the framework I had, and we can talk about it later on, it has a multidimensional framework. So one of the most important things there is your health, your physical, cognitive, now mental health, people talk about it, but if you have that, you can do things. That's one part of it. The second dimension is the professional aspect of your life. That's very important. You have to invest in this one. The third one is cognitive. You might be successful professionally, but most of us, if you're not cognitively challenged, it leads to this. So find things which are intersection of that. The fourth one is a financial aspect. It allows you to do certain things. Many of us use the term retired and say we retired because we can now go out and do certain things. So that's the financial dimension to it. The fifth one is the relationship. That invest in these, not just professional, but I think you talked about family. Find out who they are. One of the reasons I retired, people say, what are you going to do? Well, I'm just going to spend time with my mom. She's 81. I'm taking her all over the world. She goes on these insane journeys with me. Well, if I retire 5 years later, she won't be able to do it. So figure that out. Or it's time with kids. So it's this relationships of it. And the sixth one is nebulous. It is something which Howard Gardner talks about introspective intelligence. Find out who you are. Invest time figuring that out and that journey. So these 6 dimensions, you have to at a point of time decide where am I investing in. And if you can keep this in balance, then I think it leads to an overall happiness. And I've met people in Silicon Valley who are insanely financially successful professionally and just unhappy and not worth it.
That's great. Really enjoyed it. Anybody else would like to share a different version of this? Or yes?
No, just one point a little related, it doesn't really lead to fun when you're very serious. So have a sense of humor about everything. Just have some fun, things work out. And really, when someone comes around and makes you laugh, it just everything becomes easier. That's very important, I think. Never lose sight of that.
How are we doing on time? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for sharing everything you've done so far. I've heard this perspective previously that there's 2 kinds of engineers, just like put it in binary. There's a generalist and a specialist. And I wanted to share this story that happened over the summer that kind of just resonates with me. And it was when I was interning, and my roommate had feedback from his manager, and the manager had, in short, said, "Hey, you're a great engineer, but you're a master at nothing." Which this is kind of an extreme situation, right? But we've seen scenarios, like I'm sure some of you guys heard of, like these big meta offers for AI researchers, with that being like a huge topic in society. But then you also have the generalist that is able to hop around, new trends in technology and work on that, practically work on the solution. So it kind of both ends of things. And you guys mentioned, venturing down the journey of PhD is something that is one specialist journey where you're the only one or one of few people doing that. But you've also mentioned that, like, sometimes the time is really critical, so you might even put a pin in that. So basically, since the answer is so fluid and you just really never know, how would you go about developing those specialized skills versus generalists so that you can make yourself, really impact as an engineer and just like a contributor to society?
I'll just say that you're either a generalist or a specialist. The key is to figure out which one you are and own it. And because we always need both, right? But we do need clarity on which one are you, right? There are times when I'm putting together teams where it's very, very clear to me how many generalists do I need and how many specialists do I need and what do I need specialists in. So I think figuring out what you are is really all you need to do, and own it. And if a manager critiques you for being a generalist, right, just double down on that. Yes, that's what I am. I'm a generalist. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's actually a little bit more stable of, if you're going to choose. But please don't choose. Please just recognize which one you are.
I think what Kim said, even if you're a journalist, be willing to go and build that depth in certain areas as needed. Nobody wants a clueless journalist. You look at Sundar Pichai, one of the greatest examples of a journalist who rose to the ranks of one of the most technical companies. But guess what? He was able to go down the rabbit hole and come up and use that generalized skill to actually ask questions that specialists weren't asking. So I would say, yes, if you're a journalist, then be willing to go down deep, maybe not to the level of somebody who has done only that thing. Conversely, if you're a specialist, then be willing to go broad at times. So I would say there's a notion that was used called spike integrator, that you actually are able to integrate a number of disciplines, but you're able to go down. And I can tell you that the best specialists that I met, they actually were great at what they were doing, but they were also able to see the dots other places, right? Any of the problem that Keith or Kim or Shri or I have solved cannot be done by a specialist, cannot be done by its people who are actually able to have conversation at these levels. So that's what I would say is that be whatever you are, figure out as Kim said, but then be able to invest in the other areas also.
Yeah, I think both. I'm just kind of going back to your question of the generalist and the specialist, I think both can be successful, and they tend to be maybe different personalities a little bit. I often think of like some wonderful generalists, for example. I think, for example, people I work with, like in patent law, right? I mean, they know law, right? They have a law degree, and they also have an engineering degree, and they can manage both of those, right? But they're not necessarily like in engineering necessarily going to be the people that really dive down. I think PhD tends to be more special. I'm a specialist for sure, 100%. So I'm like hardcore, deep down into the details and understand that. But I do think generalists tend to have a better view of the big picture, right? So they tend to be able to say like, hey, this is what, don't forget, the forest from this tree, type thing. Like make sure you see the big picture and what's going on there. So I agree, it's important to kind of learn enough. Even if I'm a specialist, I try to understand that aspect, but I'm deep down into the technical details. So.
I'm sort of going to combine what all three of them said. I agree, you have to choose, be one or the other. But I also agree with Mohit that you have to be specialist at least one thing and generalist at several others. And I think he also said, you both have a lot of room to contribute. But if you think just from yourself, don't abandon your mothership of a specialty, ever. But have respect for general knowledge about a lot of things and be able to do them to someone.
Yeah, I was just going to add one follow-up to that, and it just kind of goes to a comment I think you mentioned earlier, is that I think like after you've been working for a period of time, you want to be known for something, right? Like they're going to contact you because this is a problem they know you're the right person to solve, right? Kim mentioned earlier about organizing a team, and they're like, hey, I need someone that can do this, and this is the person I'm going to get, type thing. So I think whether you're generalist or specialist, really have that, what you're known for. It's more than just marketing. Like it's not a marketing thing, that's really important.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough. And what he said, it could be a more non-technical area. So for example, at Silicon Valley, one of the reasons I've been successful is that in engineering and VC community, when they're doing a very complex enterprise problem, I'm the product guy that I can be thrown in. And that has allowed me to go into completely disparate areas of engineering. But that is what he's talking about, that you are actually known, that throwing, you're building a new product, could be storage, could be EDA, could be AI. Well, possibly we can actually have someone. Or it could be a very specific technical area. So I think have that distinction that people say, you know what, this is the person I need for this.
Great responses. Okay, any other questions?
We have space for one more, time for one more.
Yes, I think we can do one more question.
If nobody has.
Anybody else? Otherwise we'll go back to you. Anybody else have a question?
I do have a question. So we mentioned earlier failing fast, but I'd like to know more about the steps after you fail fast. Where do you go from there? Because pivoting is sometimes the answer, but not always. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
I mean, so I think when I think about it from a project standpoint, right? Like sometimes we'll have two hypotheses, and we're like, all right, well, let's come up with what is a fail fast mechanism for each of the hypotheses, right? What is something that we can determine within 3 months, definitively? This is the metric we're going to use. If we can move that metric to this given number, right? So being very, very clear on like what does failure look like, right? Making that very time bound, right? 3 months, 4 months, not 2 years, not, I don't know, until we really feel, because that can go on forever. And then shutting that down cleanly. Right? Because again, this was a theory that made sense. What were the learnings from that? So that you have that for posterity. And then it's like, okay, let's pursue that other path. Sometimes these, are both happening in parallel, and you just send two teams off on two different theories, and then you have to fail fast to where everybody merges together onto the winning path. Then it's a win-win. It is very important, like organizationally, that you don't frame that fail fast as actual failure. That's a huge success. You saved the company tons of money, potentially spending years down the wrong path. So I think, yeah, there are known ways to do the whole fail fast mechanism for sure.
I think one thing that in organizations, you have to make a separation between so-called failure of an idea or a hypothesis versus individuals. Create an environment. Many of our senior leaders, our job actually is to create a vibrant environment where only because a hypothesis or an idea failed should not, in fact, we should reward those who took that risk. Otherwise, people just start doing. So I think that's one thing. Now, what does it mean as an individual? I think what fail fast simply means, once again, only because a particular hypothesis and idea failed. You know what? That doesn't mean that you have some serious deficiency or you yourself as an individual. And so I would say what I said at an organizational level applies at individual level as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with your point about we should reward like failures, but often, unfortunately, in industry we don't. Quite honestly. But what I would say to your point it goes back to we talked earlier about failing fast, is that once you get there, or by the way, it may not necessarily be fast, but once you've identified that you failed, is the learning that you have, right? So you approached it with a certain mindset. You approached it and said, hey, if I get to this point and this all makes sense, but for some reason, once you reach the point where you think you're ready to pivot, it's because there's new information that you now have. So you're like, the way I'm approaching it is not going to work. It's not going to work for this reason. And so now that reason is something that you have like in your toolbox of like how to approach this problem. So I think it's getting that key learning where it's very clear what's possible and what's not possible.
And the saying of fail fast always, I think, needs to have a context of the goals and timelines you have to begin with. If they're not being reached or if your timelines are slipping, then you can do something about it. But if you get into something without having those two things clear, then you don't know where you're going. Maybe the fail fast term applies more there. Otherwise, you very analytically shift your goal, or you decide not to put in more resources. That's what I think.
I want to plug this really great TED Talk by Astro Teller. He leads Google X Moonshot Factory. And it talks about celebrating failures and the importance of celebrating failures. Because if you don't celebrate failures, then people don't take risks. And that's the exact opposite of what they're trying to accomplish at the Moonshot Factory, like taking big moonshot risks. So some of the things that have come out of Google X Moonshot, like Waymo, can't remember what the other ones are, but Waymo's the big one. And so I highly, highly recommend that talk. I found it super inspirational.
Who was that by?
Astro Teller.
Okay, I'll be sure to look that up.
All right, do you have a, go ahead, with your, maybe just one of the panelists can answer? Okay.
So, when you were a student back then and when you are in the industry right now, what was the one way of connecting with people or networking that has always worked well so far? Back then in the 2000s and also right now, 25 years later, what was the one thing or a couple of things that really worked out to you connecting with people and maintaining connections in the industry and as also as a student?
Okay, we'll take Sridhar.
In networking, the one thing that always works is give before you take.
I'm going to take an approach that might be a little bit different. I think, because I've heard some people who participate in IEEE related activities, that is a phenomenal networking opportunity. So like I participated in a conference, International Associate Circuits Conference, and that is the best networking. And it's not just people in the industry, it's people, or excuse me, at my company, it's people throughout, right? So I find that to be one of the great, like now those one-on-one and how you connect with people in your given organization and so forth. But I think serving in IEEE is the best networking that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right, so we are going to finish the panel, but there's one last request I have. If you could just give maybe a few phrases of guidance to these students about their future careers, what would that be? Just very quick. Give me even one word.
Also remain curious, take risks.
So go with your gut.
So do what you love.
I'm going to say do the simple case first.
Excellent.
Simple case first.